All right, welcome to another episode of The Way We See It. This is Pastor Alex Bryant. My lovely bride Angela is not with us tonight. I'm actually doing this in two different formats. We're going to do podcasts, but we're also going to record this as a Zoom call. And I have some of my friends that I've invited on here who want to talk about a subject that is in front of all the American people right now. You all have probably most likely seen the video now, the incident that happened on Monday, May 25th in Minneapolis. It was between the Minneapolis police and a man named George Floyd. And I'll just kind of give you, if you're underneath a big old brick and you haven't known the stories, but there was an incident where this gentleman, George Floyd, he's in his 40s. The police were called because there was suspicious activity at a local grocery store of a man writing forging checks. And so the police came, they attempted to arrest him. This is according to the police report. And it went wrong. They said that he fit the description that he was a black man. And so they attempted to arrest him and it didn't go as well. So according to Minneapolis police, the encounter between Floyd and the officers happened just around 8 p.m. on Monday. They were called to the 3700 block of Chicago Avenue South. A man attempting to forge documents at Cup Foods. The officers found Floyd in a car at the scene. They said that he appeared intoxicated, and they ordered him to get out of his car. And you've seen some of the videos, most likely. They said that he resisted arrest. After he got out, he physically resisted officers, according to the article of the local newspaper there. The police spokesman, John Elder, told reporters early on Tuesday that the officers were able to get the suspect into handcuffs, and officers noticed that the man was going into medical distress. An ambulance was brought, and they took Floyd to Hennepin Healthcare, where he later died. That's what the police report said. And friends, I'm going to tell you, that's hard to swallow. And I've invited some of my friends here. We have not really gone into this in great detail. I'm going to introduce the men that I've invited to come on here and talk with me today. But I wanted you to hear from some leaders and some people and some black men, and to get our perspective, because hear me on this. And I know that a lot of black people, white people, brown people, everybody listen to my podcast and they watch our Facebook. But man, there's people hurting. I know for me, I've said this, I watched this video 8 times now, and I have some thoughts I'm going to share. But I wanted you to get some real perspective. And so I've invited a few gentlemen to join me. We have Tony Gilmore, Pastor Tony, maybe say hi to people or whatever. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Pastor Tony. He pastors in St. Louis. He's a local pastor there. He's a St. Louis native. And he is a local pastor. He started Tony Gilmore Ministries, and he does a great job there in St. Louis. And so I'll give him a chance to greet you, but I'll keep it going. We have Derek McBride. Derek McBride is one of my longest friends. We've known each other since college. We played football together at Evangel University. He's also a St. Louis native, and he is the author of the upcoming book, One Search for All. And I'll give him a chance to tell you about that as well. He's a St. Louis native as well. And then we have Pastor Isaiah. He's an evangelist and communicator from St. Louis, one of the most dynamic young evangelists and communicators I know. And we've worked together in the past too. So gentlemen, thank you for joining me here. And let's start with you, Pastor Tony. I mean, man, just tell me your thoughts when you watch this video. What's on your heart, your mind? Take the floor.
You know, when I saw the video, my wife and I watched it together, and rage, anger, just not really understanding how something like that could take place in America. After watching it, I tried to go to sleep, and it was like all night long I tossed and turned thinking about just that poor man who, whatever he did, whatever he had done, because I didn't know all the details, he didn't deserve to die. And that was the thing that kept ringing through my mind. And I began to think about my 3 boys. And, once again, now I have to give another pep talk, another speech, another coaching on, hey guys, this is the world we live in. everybody white isn't bad, understanding that, there are evil people. It's like I've just had to give that speech too often. And so I'm still wrestling even now to just get to a place of just peace and moving forward with it.
Yeah. What about you, Derek? What's in your mind and your heart?
I would echo Pastor Tony's comments, and I think the first thing that I thought was not again. Here we go again. Oh my gosh! I mean, and it's a very it's a sad situation. I've had conversations with several people today, and a lot of those conversations have either started with or ended with, how are you going to raise your child from this point on, knowing that this is how the world may see them. How are you going to raise your child, and how are you going to navigate through this? But some obvious concerns were with his family, and how did we even get to this place? Have we ever left this place? How do we get to this point? And again, and challenge with, have we ever left from this point? 40 years ago, what's changed, if anything, if nothing has changed? So I think you go through 25, 26, 27 different kind of questions initially, and people are looking, as a leader in the community, people are looking, to you to have answers to help them make sense of this as well. So I'm excited to just share anything that I can with it, and look forward to hearing from the rest of the fellows.
That's good, man. Pastor Isaiah?
Well, for me, there's a difference. There's a different dialogue in my mind and in my heart. I have two different conversations. Like, I'm grappling with the sovereignty of God, right? And then I'm grappling with the fact that how in the world could this happen again? For me, I'm 39. I'll be 40 this year. I got tattoos. I fit every description. Yeah. And it's almost like when Pastor Tony was talking about giving those speeches, like, what is really the right thing? You tell me to be polite, I'm polite, and you kill me. You tell me to put my hands on the steering wheel. You tell me to reach for my ID. You tell me to do all these things, and the end result, even if we don't know all the details of every case, the end result always, most times, leads to rest in peace. Or it leads to there's another one, or Black Lives Matter, right? I'm grappling with the fact is, how are we supposed to honor people we can't trust? Right? How do we tell the youth that we lead to honor the police if now the police aren't honoring us? Right? I think the only difference now in this century is that it's televised now. Phones are out. It's video. The question is, like, most people say, well, it just started happening. No, we just started getting footage of it. So when I first saw it, I was en route to work, and the thoughts that came to my mind, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, how do I explain to my coworkers who are not Christian, if there is a God? Everybody says, how could he let this happen? And in my heart, I'm like, that's a great question. But I have to give my answer, right? I still have to give my answer. But looking at the world and looking at the police and looking at everything that's happening, man, it's really a heart problem. And I'm, and it's really, to me, it's sickening to me, for sure.
Guys, I want to talk for a minute, and I want us to like hit on this video and what we saw, because I watched it 8 times now. I wanted to see everything. I didn't want to miss anything. I know some people I've talked to today, I can't watch it. I don't want to watch it. It made me cry. And I did. And I was careful. I wrote the details down because I wanted to get the exact details that were given to the public from what the news, the local news in Minneapolis reported from the police. And here's the biggest thing. The first thing I want to talk about is these were the details according to the local news. That's all we would have known had it not been for somebody recording it. Because the bottom line is this, guys. They said that he died at the hospital later. I just don't believe that for a second. I think that there was a moment where I saw this man die on the streets. I mean, speak to that.
I think that there's so much that is left to the interpretation, which really bothers me. I think there have been several news outlets and sources that have absolutely said he died at the scene. There's no question about it. And if that's the case, then that's a completely different issue and topic that we need to discuss. I mean, just to be honest with you. But I think, the bigger picture is like Pastor Isaiah said, is we work with some of these people who are looking at us as being the light in the darkness. And how do we explain this? How do we explain this to coworkers? How do we explain this to the youth we serve? How do we explain this to friends and family who aren't believers, who don't believe the way we do? So I think there's a lot of big issues that are at play here.
Derek, and I want to say that, but I know that when people watch Alex Bryant or my ministry or just me, they know that I'm going to keep it real. And I saw the man die. I mean, and I don't like it when you try to tell me, or when the police give out this narrative. And everyone knows I'm pro-police. I've said this over and over. My brother-in-law is a police. I got 2 black police officer cousins in Illinois. My uncles have been police. I got countless friends that are police. We work with a lot of them at the St. Louis Dream Center. Pastor Tony, you're going to have them there on Sunday, keeping you safe and some people on Saturday. But you can't try to tell me that the police didn't kill this man right there.
Oh, they definitely murdered that man right there. Like, I was watching it, and I literally for a second had to just kind of look, and I'm like, is the car leaking, or did he just pee and lose his bodily function on the floor, on the ground?
I didn't see that till you told me that, and I went back and watched it.
Yeah.
And it's coming from up, and it started small. You can just see it get longer. And I'm like, this man is dying. And they're like, he's resisting arrest, but he's moving to try to get air. And he's constantly telling them, I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. And you hear the dialogue of the people with the phone saying, check his pulse. Just check his pulse. Check his pulse. And you literally saw the man's life leave him. His mouth, he began to foam. It was in the corner of his mouth. He's laying on the ground, and life is gone.
I saw his eyes roll back. I mean, I literally saw a point when his eyes were like rolling back.
Gone. And he never let up his knee.
Yeah, that was the part right there. When the guy cried out, "Mama," that's like one of those statements that when nothing else is working,
that's your last breath of fresh. Yeah, that's your last.
Yeah, it's like, I need help. Somebody help me. That was the only thing that came to his mind. And you see the people, you hear the people talking, pleading with the policemen to do what they know they should be doing to keep, this man alive. And I saw it, and that's the part that got me. It's like, wow, this is where television has gotten to as well. Remember in the old days, the news would say, hey, this is graphic. Let's move away from this. But it's this weird part that you don't know exactly what media's role is in this. And
we don't trust them. People don't trust the media.
That's it. They show it. They show the whole thing. They show the whole thing till his last breath goes out of his body, and we're there to watch it on video. The word I kept thinking about as I saw it was dehumanization.
That's it.
It's like this guy to the policeman was not human. And because of that, it didn't matter if he couldn't breathe or couldn't do anything. And that's the part that was heart-wrenching.
PT, a couple things. I couldn't get enough of this. Last night I watched an interview with the man's family members. And because I heard him call out mama too. Somebody help me, mama. Mm-hmm. So his mom had died 2 years earlier.
Right.
And so he's calling out to mom.
Wow.
I mean, and so was he going to, I remember when my dad died. And we were in the hospital room, and he was starting to like hallucinate and stuff. I mean, and then even so, a grown man,
Yeah.
how dehumanizing is that for you to pee your pants, to call out to your mom, like right there. And then I saw, when the police officers, it seemed like after he couldn't breathe, and we'll get even more of this, but it seemed like the police officer, when the crowd was starting to yell at him and cuss at him even more, it's almost like he was pushing down even harder, pushing down even more. As a sign of, I own you. When I first saw the video, I thought his hand was in his pocket. It turns out he had on black gloves and they were on his thigh.
Yeah.
Just kind of almost like, it's easy for me to own you. It's easy for me to dominate you. That made me mad.
Yeah, Alex, but Pastor Tony and Pastor, what do you expect? What did you expect? I mean, once you saw what you saw, from any point from that, what did you expect? Did you expect to see a sprinkle of the truth in that? Did you expect to see some type of going back to humanizing this man? I mean, once you saw the initial steps that they were taking to apprehend this man, from that point on, what else did we expect? What else did we expect?
Can I say this? I expected more because, and I share this, I mean, I think everybody knows now we got a book out, start again, but my experiences with police in my life have overwhelmingly been positive. And I've been in St. Louis, I've been in, different other cities, some suburban areas, whatever. And I have family members that are police, and I expected more. Like I know it because we've seen it, but my worldview is that by and large, the police are good. Everybody knows how I feel about it. We put out a video a couple years ago. It went viral, 35 million views. I think that police by and large are good. I expected more. I expect more. And when my oldest son, Trey, who's 18, going to be 19, he says exactly what you say, Derek. What do you expect? Police all bad. It ticks me off. It hurts.
And see,
And you
go ahead.
And you have to think about this too. It's like we look at we create a worldview based on our experience.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of your experience with police officers, for the most part, have been great. You've obliged them. They've done you well. But we're living in a generation where even if they've never been pulled over before, all they know of police is what they see now.
Yeah.
All they know of police. So even if Trey, or even if any 16 or 15-year-old boy has never encountered a police, their perspective of police are murderers. For me, I lived in a prominent community here in St. Louis in Clayton. It's called Clayton, downtown Clayton, in the business district for 6 years. For 2 weeks, I got pulled over almost every morning on my way to work.
Man.
Literally, because they did not believe I lived in that area. I took my daughter to school. They followed us home to make sure that I lived in the area. I picked her up from school one day, and they said, "Oh, you must be her uncle. You couldn't be her father." Like, those are my encounters, and multiple encounters. Now, I had some good, some bad. But I think you're not wrong, Pastor Alex, for expecting good out of a person who took an oath to be good.
To serve and protect is what they
like. I think that's why it hurts so much.
Yeah, go ahead, Pastor.
I think that's why it hurts so much. A couple of weeks ago in St. Louis, we lost a 3-year-old girl not too far from our church. And she died, at the hands of, some gangbangers or something, but it was neighborhood guys. And so, we're heartbroken that the 3-year-old is gone and for that family. But there was an aspect of it that was like, okay. But when you go into this thing where it's the police and George Floyd, well, now my expectation is higher because of what they've sworn to do. And it becomes that much more disappointing to see this situation take place. And I'm with you, PA. My experiences with the police near our church, the police, it's been positive. And so my kids' experience, my boys' experiences have been positive to this point. And so it's hard for them to see this. And P.I., you're hitting the nail on the head, because in a social media-driven environment, now everybody's experiences start to become our own, because this is the lens we see.
I want to say this too, because, and Derek, I want you to go back to this, because it really wasn't until I came to St. Louis, and when I was, there working, and we were all at, working at the church there, that I started to see the systemic racism, the systemic racial profiling. Because again, most of my experiences are positive. When I grew up in my town in Macomb, Illinois, our Uncle Bill was on the police, and I mean, and I got out of tickets. People knew me. I was a local, athlete, star, this and that. And so I had positive worldviews. And then when I came to St. Louis and I saw it, I saw the profiling. I saw the systemic nature. Even like, for example, when you look at the traffic cameras there, I lived out in South County. We didn't have those in St. Louis. But then as soon as I started driving to the inner city, and as soon as I got on Fairground Park, Natural Bridge, boom, you make a wrong red turn, they're going to hit you with $100 in the mail, And then so you get that traffic light ticket for $100, you get 3 of those, you can't get your license renewed. So if I can't afford 100, I can't afford 300 to get it paid. So now I'm driving around with a suspended license, and the next thing you know, you get pulled over something. What's the narrative that the media is going to say? Local black thug gets pulled over with suspended license and, is distributing drugs. Well, he's got a bag of weed that he bought from the little white dude in the suburbs. But yet, and so you see the systemic nature. So Derek, you grew up in St. Louis. I mean, you said, what do we expect? I mean, what is your experiences? I mean, what?
Man, let me tell you, and it goes back to Michael Brown, because I used to hang out in Ferguson all the time. But my experiences with police officers are positive only by design, not by default. It's by design.
Talk about what that means.
That's good.
Talk about what that means, because there's some people that don't understand what you mean.
It is by design. It is where you make a purposeful attempt at making sure that your license is correct, that you say the right things, that you do the right things, that you go the right places. I'm telling you, in St. Louis, there are certain places after 10 o'clock that we didn't go.
Yeah.
There are certain places that if you had to run an errand, you knew who to run it with, where to run it with, and what kind of car. It's by design. So yeah, we trust the police, but we trust them by design, not because it's default and it is to protect and to serve. Man, to protect and to serve is for me. I need to protect me, and I need to make sure I can serve my family. I mean, that's how that's going to go down. But I grew up in St. Louis, man, and I grew up in a rough part of St. Louis, starting out. And like I said, I had an encounter with some drug dealers, and my parents they whipped me out to the suburbs, man, where on my street, I was the only black kid. And so you can call that whatever you want to call it, but my parents saw the writing on the wall. They knew what was going on. And to say that this is a systemic problem, to me, is an understatement. That's what people are fighting. The words right now in our society that people are grappling over and fighting with is systemic. Yeah. Is this been something that's been going on for years and years? Is it part of our system? Heck yeah, it is. You better believe it. It goes all the way back to you being followed in a grocery store or in a high-end market. I mean, it's a system. It is a system, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a system of oppression. It's just in the system. And just because we're able to drink in the same water fountain, and just because we're able to swim in the same swimming pool, that doesn't mean things are better today. I'm just saying it doesn't. And that's the issue. Those are the conversations that I'm having with a lot of people today. Oh man, things are better, man. I don't know about that. I think you can think things are better, but the reality of it is this is what's going on. Period.
I want to go to this, because I'm going to say a statement, but then I want to throw out a question on this, because Derek, I hear where you're coming from, because I have this conversation with people all the time. Things aren't better. They're no better. I think that, and I'm going to go to, it's a scriptural thing, a biblical concept, already, but not yet, so Dr. King and our civil rights leaders, they fought for us to achieve equality, and they fought for laws to be changed. And I think that I mean, they did that. They achieved a level of success to where Angie and I can get married now. 50 years ago, we couldn't. To where the laws are on our side, they're favorable. So the laws have been changed. And I'm going to say this too. I think by and large, the majority of the American people, white, black, brown, everything, are for equality and are against injustice. However, we've not yet arrived. And I think what's happening now is when you have these instances and when you have situations, and I don't want us to get political, but they all go together. But when you have politicians on both sides trying to stoke it and stir up the flames of racism so that you don't trust them, but you trust us, and we're the ones that are really out for you or whatever, that's just stoking this stuff. And so, but what I want us to do for people that are out listening to this is, and I throw out this question. I've had talks with people today. They're saying, well, is this really about racism, or is this just about, policing and police protocols? Is it both? Can it be both? What do you guys say on that? How do you tie it together if it is?
Well, I think for me, I think it's both and. I think it's racism. I think it's an abuse of power. I made this statement to you earlier today that a heart that defaults in fear defaults in control. And you have a lot of people behind the badge that are very fearful. And when you are in fear, that's one of the first things that you do is you try to control the situation, a group of things. So that is the knee-jerk reaction. Let me control. Because to be honest, I'm pro police. I'm pro authority in that way. But what I do understand is that fear is running through the veins of every person in America, not just in America, but every person has a badge, because everybody's just doing all kind of stuff, right? So I think that, yes, it is. I think some people become a police to, you have those people that are police that were bullied in school, right? That were scrawny and skinny and say, now I want to be a police officer. You have those police that I know that really, had a father or somebody in prison that wants to do better. But then you also have a lot of police officers that have a chip on their shoulder and are racist. And the only way that they can flex that muscle legitimately is behind that badge. And I've met all three of those type of people. So I believe that it's both ends.
Pastor Isaiah, and the fear runs both ways, brother.
I agree.
Fear, if I'm a cop in today's society, man, I'm scared to death.
100%.
If I'm a black man in today's society, I am scared to death.
Yeah.
And you put those two immovable forces against each other, and you have a combustible environment right there.
100%.
You got two people who are scared to death of each other, and the only thing they know how to do is react and defend. So I love the word. I love the word fear, and it's running all through our society.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if I'm a police officer right now, I'm scared to death. I wouldn't want to be a police officer today in today's time. I wouldn't want to be a good, honorable police officer today. Are you out your mind? You may not come home. And you may not come home because you pulled me over and Derek McBride is scared to death. Yeah. And I may do something just out of being scared.
Yeah.
PT?
Yeah. And man, I can't even say it any better. And that's where, like for today, as I spent my time at work and praying, God just kept taking me back to the spiritual war that we're in. And that fear being a major driver of that is causing a lot of what we're experiencing. But it doesn't change the natural implications of, okay, we understand it's a spiritual war. We understand that we need to attack it spiritually. But then there are some practical things to walk out in this world because we're connected that still matter. And as a black man, Derek, I thought about what you said, man, and you're right. What I've taught my boys and what I've done myself has kept it cool because I've designed everything to work that way because of the stuff that I've learned. But in the society that we're in the context that I work in North St. Louis, guys aren't always taught that. And it is that fear that drives them to buck up or stand up for themselves because they're afraid of being taken out. They're like, I'm going to be the aggressor in this situation. And it makes for an explosive situation.
I said,
and I know, like, for me, like, I have a pretty nice car. But when I drive through this is just how innately it has changed. Even in the back of my mind, like, I don't wear my hat, or if it's backwards, I turn it around because I don't want any reason to be pulled over by the police. I remember I was pulled over by the police, and I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that my wallet is on my dashboard. I turn my head around. Like, I never felt that level of anxiety in my life. So innately, I think it's infiltrated our minds in a way that we are fearful of people that we should be trusting to serve and protect us. So it's really weird.
You know, you say something, Alex. You talked about equality and justice. And man, those are beautiful words. And those are beautiful things. And everybody and their grandma, I don't care who you are, wants equality and they want justice. But I'm telling you, in your everyday life, it's a different. When you live your life from minute to minute, from hour to day, that's a different road race than we talking about equality and justice. You get up in the morning and you're not having the best day, and something, you don't have the right breakfast, and you have to work it out every day through your day, every minute, every hour. And if you're not focused on that, on the equality part and the justice part, you're just living your day. You're just almost living to die. And if you don't watch out, if you're not careful, you're living to pay bills, you're working to pay bills. And situations like this allow you to press the pause button and say, okay, let's look at this thing again, man. We got to go back to the beginning. Let's figure this thing back out. And we got to throw out the words equality. We got to throw out the words justice again, because somewhere along the line, which is your everyday living, Alex Bryant's everyday living, Pastor Tony's everyday living, man, I'm sure Pastor Tony's a great guy, but there are times where he gets tired and he's just trying to get through the day. Yeah. Forget equality, forget justice. Yeah. Forget all that. That goes out the door when you're just trying to make it through the day. And I think that's where we have to bridge the gap between what we want to have happen and what actually happens in our every day-to-day life. That's the difference.
We're talking a lot about fear, and I got this from Star Wars, but we write about this in our book. I said, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Mm-hmm. We see that play out so many times on both sides. And I love that you guys pointed out it's on both sides. Fear, something we fear, we just, we fear the unknown most of the time. We don't know what to happen. And I see, and part of this too, though, is when you go back to just understanding police, because I talk to them. I talk to my cousins. I talk to my brother-in-law. I talk to my uncles. And I get it that both them and their families are fearful that they're going to come home, and they're on high alert. You pull someone over. But this is where they have to be trained better. I mean, they have to be, and even having integrity. We need police officers with integrity. And then here's another thing. These police officers have to get past this mindset of we always back the blue. Because it should not happen that you have that many dudes. Wouldn't one of them have the wherewithal to say, hey, I think that's a little bit too much. Like, wait, hold, you're going too far right there. But that's where the fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, because there are so many young Black people that just hate the police. I had somebody on my Facebook say, I'm going to spit in the face of the next police officer I see. Mm-hmm. I watched for about an hour and a half last night till about 1 a.m. Angie finally said, Alex, you got to turn that off. I'm trying to get some sleep. I'm literally sitting there at the foot of my bed. I'm watching it. I'm crying. And I'm listening to the live. They had a couple of the local people on their Facebook lives. I'm just watching them. and I'm just hearing them, and they're just mad. F the police. I hate that one. Just the fear led to anger to hate, and then we see the suffering, and it breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. But now I'll say this. And any other thoughts on that? I don't want to move past it too fast. I mean, you guys got any other thoughts? I mean,
No, me personally, man, I think, even with this COVID-19 and using words like pandemic, and I said this to myself the other night, we've had a pandemic before this COVID-19 ever came about. It's so weird in what we give names to and what we give positive press to and preventative things to help not, they went through so much and they've gone through so much to say, this is how you cannot. They shut the world down so people wouldn't get sick. But we've been living in a pandemic as African Americans. But again, somebody said now it's just televised. Now everybody just has a phone to see what actually has been happening for decades and decades and decades. And Derek, I think you said it before, we have water, we drink out the same water fountains, we go to the same places, but it just looks different now. Go ahead, Pierre.
I want to say this, and I mean, I talk to Black people, I talk to white people. I like it when white people feel comfortable enough to really shoot me their straight opinions, and here's what they say. Is this really a pandemic? Because then they like to go to things like, let's look at the statistics and, so many, by the numbers, more white people are being killed, this or that or whatever. And I don't agree with that. I mean, and how come only when every now and then a Black person kills, or they'll say stuff like, and you guys know this, I mean, we live in, St. Louis, or well, how come in Chicago, Black people get killed? I saw in the newspaper 12 Black people got killed, over the Memorial Day weekend, Black on Black crime or whatever. So talk to that, because you have some white people saying, how's it a pandemic? They'll look the numbers.
Here's the difference in that. Some of that could be self-inflicted. I'm not sure. Some of that could be environmental. I'm not sure. But if my son and I are riding in the car, the last place that we should be fearful of is in the presence of police officers, period. That's the last place. I mean, if I'm in a room and and a drug deal is going down, I probably should be fearful, and that probably can bring on a consequence. But the last place that I should be fearful of is in the presence of a law officer, of a police officer, of someone who is supposed to protect me. That's how you answer that question, Alex. That's how you answer. I can't speak to I've never been in a gang. I've never done drugs. I've never drank alcohol. I've never smoked marijuana. I can't answer that. But let me tell you what, brother, I've been pulled over, and in those times I've been pulled over, I've never been more scared in my life than any of those other things I mentioned.
That's good.
So that's how you answer that question.
Yeah.
In our context in North St. Louis, I mean, drugs, alcohol, all types of stuff is going on. But when we talk to, I had to talk to some of my team this morning just to kind of walk them through this and pastor them. And it is insane to think that there is more fear in dealing with the people that are supposed to protect us than the people that we got to drive by on our way into our jobs every single day. And so it's insane to think that, PI, PA, you all been in that environment. You know what it's like to have something go down. And then it's like, man, okay, let me call the police, but not even feel valued enough for the police to get there. It's just like, oh, wow. If I call the police from my house, I know they'll be here probably in the next 5, whatever. But if I call people from where I work, man, we had a situation where it was 35 minutes, and somebody's life was in danger. And it's like, that is the feeling of being devalued. And that is the pandemic right there. Yeah. That people in the inner city, they don't have the same level of protection or safety, and everybody deserves that.
I'll say this, and I mean, I asked that because I know the answer. And there's a few thoughts that I have, and I say this, that number one, statistics don't say everything. That's one thing that ticks me off. Like when there's by the numbers, the statistics say statistics don't say everything because statistics can be manipulated, stories can be changed. That's why, like the police report, guys, this would have been down as he died at the hospital after he went into distress just because if there was no video, we never would have been able to watch with our own eyes this man dying out on the streets. It would have just been the police there and these people that take an oath to serve and protect, which they get the benefit of the doubt, which that's another thing. Do you guys get the benefit of the doubt? I mean,
No.
I'm looking at, like, what's so funny is I'm looking at some accomplished, educated, distinguished Black gentlemen, and you guys are telling me you don't get the benefit of the doubt? Come on now. If anybody's going to get it, it's going to be you. No?
Nah.
Isn't that sad?
No.
Yeah.
Isn't that sad? So then now I'm going to go to perception. And Angie and I talk about this. Like, this is what I said. Had Angie, had that been, and this is a question I was asking some of the people, I said, if this was a mid-40s white woman, what are the chances of her being dead right now? Zero.
She wouldn't have been on the ground.
Not even on the ground.
She would not have been arrested.
She wouldn't have even made it into the car.
Okay, so humor me now. If this was a mid-40s white man, would he have been dead?
No. He
No.
might have been
Probably
detained.
not. Right, yeah. Detained. But that's my whole thing is perception is reality. And when we talk about fear, the perception of a lot of police officers, and I know because I talk to them and they tell me this, Black, white, hey, I don't want to be this way, but there's some, things in some areas I don't want to go to. Hey, I'll admit I get a little bit, we don't even want to go to those areas. We don't want to go to those places. This is why, and I say this in our book, I was on a call earlier today and there was a gentleman that said this. He said, I'm angry of the system that is set up, that police officers have this power, the authority, the control over them. I'm angry. I'm angry that some white people just don't know. They don't get it. They're not woke to it, whatever you want to say. But then he said, I'm angry at some of our Black brothers and sisters who don't get the dream that Martin Luther King and the rest of them fought for, because our behavior plays into the stereotypes. And, and we have to take a look inside and us in our Black community. And we have to make sure that we are teaching and training and coaching and holding our younger men and women accountable on what's acceptable. And I'm not even talking about being safe, but what does it mean to be a productive member of your society? Take your skin color out.
And you have to think about this though, PA. This is a generation who they aren't parented at all.
Yeah.
Like there was a generation that I came up in that I had my grandparents at least.
Me too.
This is a generation who they have grandparents who don't even want to call grandparents, who don't raise them at all. They leave to themselves. They live in houses. They just do whatever they want, go wherever they want. They're not being trained up in the way they should go.
Yeah.
Only thing that they have training them is the perception that the media is giving them.
That's it.
Every TV show, every movie we see is in an African-American movie or whatever, violence. And the question that you said there, what do you expect? Because whatever you see is what you become. So all they see is hate the police, whatever the police, all they see is police shooting, this. There's no gauge of respect. So there is nobody to tell them unless they wander in someone's church. If they wander in a church like yours, PC, if they come to a church in the inner city, if they come to the church wherever they are, that somebody will stand up and say, hey, this is how you act. This is how you do it. This is how you live. We only get them for about 3 hours a week in the church.
That's it.
After they leave us, they go back. We're competing with 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Like, so we have that's a bigger conversation, is how do we father a generation to help them learn how you're supposed to have your license with you, keep it on the dashboard, honor the police when they pull you over, talk to them well. How do we get to this place?
Yeah, Pastor Isaiah, first of all, grandma's 35 nowadays.
Exactly.
And grandma didn't used to be 35. Grandma used to be a wise old owl that you could go to and She'll have
Yep.
breakfast for you and lunch and dinner and take care of your boo-boo and come here, baby, and let grandma's 35, man, and she's working a 10-hour job, brother. So she really don't got it like that, like it used to be. But the margin of error is so slim for African Americans. And I get, Alex, that Black people, we should be buttoned up and we should teach our children better and we should raise them better and we should provide different type of environment. Man, but that margin is, man, let a brother slip out of line and it's not like he could get arrested. If you slip out of line, if you
could die.
You could die.
Bad day.
That's a different margin of error. That's not I'm getting grounded and go to the corner and put your dunce hat on and stick your nose in the middle of the corner and you in timeout for 5 minutes. That's not even going to jail for 10 years. You dying, brother. You will die if you misstep. If you don't do all the things that we're supposed to be doing, and everyone screws up. Man, you screw up nowadays and this is my thought. This is exactly my thought. If you're a Black person in America and you screw up nowadays, you could die.
Stakes are high. Stakes are high.
Yeah.
Stakes are high, brother.
You know, I was thinking this, guys, and I mean, you know, I want to acknowledge this. There are, because it's not just the Black community that deals with drugs, this or that or whatever. I don't remember the comedian, but he says, you know, name the drug or name the crime and I'll tell you what color they are, you know, and whatnot. So like, you know, and I joke about this stuff, but like meth, I mean, that's traditionally you look at white people doing that. You see white people that are meth addicts, meth heads, whatnot. And there's some Black people obviously, but like that are messed up and I know some of the rural areas, they're like, oh, go over to that part of town. That's a bad deal. But I'm going to say this, and I want to say this to my white brothers and sisters. It's just still not the same. Like you get a white cop who knows he's going to the bad area of the white side of town where you're going to have, whether you want to call them the meth heads, the trailer park trash, whatever you want to call them, they still don't have the apprehension, the fear, the anxiety of if they go into even a middle class, all Black neighborhood. And you know, that's where when you said it, Derek, I mean, it's just not the same. The missteps, the stakes are high. And that's what we want our white brothers and sisters to know, to realize and to understand and to, you got to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the race is, and hear me out, fellas, and work with me on this one. The race is the same. The starting line is the same. The finish line is the same. But what I got on my ankle is I got a 20-pound weight on my ankle. I got an anchor around my waist. I got a noose around my neck. I got blinders on. I got one hand behind my back. I got one foot I'm hopping on. But the race is still the same, right? That's the difference. Yeah. That is the difference.
So you're getting into white privilege. You're getting into white privilege. And I mean, we've talked about this. Angie and I, you know, shared it on our podcast and we even talk about it in our book. I think a lot of people still want to refute, you know, white privilege. It exists. And, you know, Derek, when you say the race, if you want to say, okay, well, let's just agree we all have the same race, but I got some extra hindrances or whatever. I still think that the race isn't the same. I mean, some people start with back there. I mean, my kids and a lot of our kids, they have two parents that love them, that have college degrees, that, you know, have status in the community. They have an advantage that I know I didn't have when I was growing up. Grandma raised me for the first, 8-9 years of my life, And so, but white privilege, I mean.
Yeah, and let me tell you this, fellas. Let me tell you this, Alex. You're hitting on some things I love. I grew up with both of my parents. Amazing people. My parents grew up with both of their parents.
That's usually
amazing people, man. I'm telling you, my grandfather was with the NAACP. He owned a small business. He had a lot going for him. Man, he woke up and had to work every day. If he'd have been a different color, I'd be a billionaire today.
I would be.
I'd be a billionaire today. But he ain't a different color. He had to get up. He had his own store. He worked on a farm. He had to do all that just to make ends meet. Just to make ends meet, and he still was behind.
Yeah.
He still was behind.
And see,
so
where, like, with what you're saying, Derek, I understand theoretically that the starting lines may be the same because we're all born and we all die, but it's like there is a head start for whites in our communities that blacks don't have. And, you know, going into our context on a regular basis, when you don't have both parents, when somebody doesn't know their dad, so you got a young man growing up without the male influence, and he's expected to know how to be a man when a woman's teaching him how to be a man. And this is where systemic racism comes in. Because when we don't understand how these systems with men going to jail and men not being able to take care of their families and not having the ability to get educated, I can tell you now, I've been in my community for roughly about 17 years in total. I'm looking at little kids that I see as grown-ups now that are slinging drugs or doing something illegal. And I'm like, wow, that 3 hours that we had with them PI was not enough. But we could see this train coming because of the way mom was and the way dad wasn't there. And so that's the system that has bridled a lot of our young men into being statistics that can't have the same success that our white brothers and sisters. And for me, it is what it is. It is what it is. But when we talk to our white brothers and sisters, I just want them to understand that that's the way it is. No. Don't necessarily say, well, wait a minute. They got 2 legs like me. They got 2 arms like me. No. It's not the same. Please understand, my brothers and sisters that are white, it is not the same.
And I think honestly, that's all we really want them to understand. Like, I probably have way more white friends than I do black, and I'm a brother. Like, I'm a brother's brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, but I think to speak to that point, my dad was in prison for 26 years of my life. I've never been to prison before, only to visit one, only to preach in them, and only to go see people. And I grew up in a trap, St. Louis Avenue and Taylor, North City. Moved out of there, ended up going to University City. But one thing that I've learned is my mother was intentional about putting me around white people. Like, I was always the black guy. Like, I was always the black guy, you know, and I was, and, you know, and in some rooms, if you're not confident, you will water down who you are to fit in the air. But I was taught, you be who you are, but just know the room you're in. Right? But I read this sign in the bathroom one time. It said, leave it better than you found it. And I think for me, you know, and I try not to get emotional with it, is that I think we have an obligation to, wherever we're born into every color that we meet, I say, why not try to use that opportunity to change how they see another black person, right? I think we get an opportunity to try to leave this place better than we found it, no matter if the police are trying to, or intentionally doing it, or if whatever the situation. I think as black people, those that are affluent, those that can, have those hard conversations with our white brothers and sisters, or take that time to go talk to the police. But it's no different than the media. We watch media and we get a perception of how black people are. We watch movies and we get a perception of black people, they sell drugs. Black people, they get incarcerated for murder. Black people do this. There's a image of us always portrayed on the screen. But you notice every time you meet a white person, and you're not like what they've seen on TV, you almost completely blow their mind. It's almost like they're like, wait, you can talk. Like,
hey, you're well spoken. That's
you're well spoken. Like, you do this you speak for a living? Wow.
You talk like a white person.
You talk, they're completely disheveled because they're like, I've seen movies and this is not what you do. Yeah. But I think, just like that bathroom sign said, we have to leave this place better than we found it.
It's good.
And I think in every way possible, whether we meet a police officer, whether we engage in a bad way, maybe we can help one killing stop by just them knowing somebody who is not like the people that they seen on a regular basis.
That's good. That's good.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't say that is the truth. I can't say. There's so many things we need to do to fix this thing. But if we can't fix it in a day, we can sure have an encounter that may change the perspective of a person. I don't know. But that's one of the only things. Of course, we need programming. We need African American police officers in the cities that they live. In the areas that we need a black officer with a white officer to go and accompany them in the area. We need that policing. We need those programs. But I'm saying, as humans, we have to learn how to neighbor. If we're going to be Christian, we have to learn how to neighbor well, to know that Sunday mornings is just not the day that we're Christian. It is the person in our neighborhood, it's the community who know if that police officer had a Christian that was next door to him that never spoke to him. I'm not giving him an excuse. I'm not giving him a reason. I am just saying, if we're going to be Christians, we have to be that. And that's not in always being silent. That is speaking up when it's time to speak up, but it is leaving a place better than we found it. And if we can change a person's perspective by being different and by the way God created us to be, maybe it can do some help for the next African American that they meet.
Good, man.
I don't know.
Let me I'm gonna wrap this up. I think that I want to keep you guys' time, like I said, but I was listening to the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, and he said this. He said, "You can't heal a dirty wound. You can't heal a dirty wound," and I think that's why a lot of people, we want for there to be this acknowledgement. We want this to be this understanding of what it means. And again, I think majority, and I know I differ from a lot of Black people, I think that the majority of our white brothers and sisters are with us. I know there's that vocal minority, that's just my opinion, that are loud and that are vocal, but not everybody's a white supremacist. Not everyone's a racist. I think that some people are just uninformed. I think some people are ignorant or whatever it is. But in order for us to heal this dirty wound, there has to be all of us coming together and moving forward. And it's going to take love. It's going to take forgiveness. It's going to take unity in order for there to be peace. And so I have asked you all to come here. We're all Christians. Everybody on this call, we're all believers. 3 of us are pastors, but we're all Christians. I want us to give a final message. What's the word that we want to leave? Derek, I'm going to start with you. Like, what's, from a Christian perspective, from knowing that we are hurting, there's anger, there's pain, there's resentment, but what word do you want to leave? And I want to leave on a good, positive note. Derek?
Wow, that's a tough question. I would say hope. Hebrews 12:1-2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that entangles us and the sin that so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race set before us. I mean, that's it. And there's a lot of hope in that message right there. Let us run before us. The hope set before us. I mean, I think if I had to give a word, it'd probably be hope.
That's good. What about you, P.I.? What word do you want to give?
I mean, of course, we can always lead out with love, but I will probably have to say intentionality. I think it's very important that we, those who are Christians, we are very intentional about our faith and intentional having hard conversation. I think healing, having hard conversation, not just with each other, our white brothers and sisters, is to have those, because it's one thing, I talked to you about this earlier, it's one thing to say, hey, that's my brother, that's my sister in the opposite race, but it's another thing to have a hard conversation and still walk away and say, that's my brother and that's my sister. And I would encourage everyone that's listening to be intentional about having the hard conversations to see actually where you stand. And I think once we figure out where we stand, then that's when we can figure out where we're going.
It's good. PT, what do you got?
I echo what you said earlier about I believe, and I differ from a lot of my Black peers, in that I don't believe that all whites are bad. I believe that I've got some very good, most of my friends are white. Like how white people say, I got a black best friend. Well, I have a lot of white friends that have been good to me and my family and been a blessing. But the word that came to me this morning, I actually woke up in a bad place, and God sent me to love your enemies. And when he sent me to that, I'm like, wait a minute, am I calling whoever these police are, whatever, my enemies? And somehow he sent me to Martin Luther King's speech on November 17th, 1957, that Martin Luther King preached a message called Love Your Enemies. Yeah. And it was in that message that he laid out 6 incredible points, of which I will not preach to you now, but 6 incredible points that gave me a sense of hope and strength that if Martin Luther King, in the midst of racial tensions and everything that was going on, could preach this message that, yeah, we haven't arrived yet, but we've made some progress. Yeah. I can ask God to give me a revelation of that kind of love that he gave him, so that I can be, P.I., what you talked about, the example of who we really are, and be that person who can help, stop the next person from being killed, because they say every black man isn't like that. And I believe that's a responsibility we all hold. And at the end of the day, I think love is the most powerful weapon that we can wield.
Amen. Amen. Well, guys, I'm going to just tell you this. I think people that listen to or that know, me, they understand and know our heart behind this. A few years ago, God called Angie and I to do this full time. I mean, this is what we're doing. We are spreading the message of reconciliation unto God, ourselves, and each other. And we do this from a Christian perspective. We believe that it's not just about coming together of the races. I mean, that's a part of it. We want justice. We want equality. We want unity and reconciliation. But the most important part for us, and we believe that the church, that Christians should be the ones that are leading in racial reconciliation, so that we then can have the opportunity to spread the gospel of Jesus to everybody that we encounter. Doesn't matter their color, red, black, yellow, white, doesn't matter. We are all made in the image of God, each and every one of us. And I want, if police officers are watching, I mean, Imago Dei, we are all made in the image of God. We're all humans, whether they're black, white, brown, whatever. You wouldn't treat a human like that. I mean, if George Floyd was an animal and PETA saw the way that he was choked out like that, man, please, and so I want my police officer friends to know, man, these are people, and we know you're afraid, and there's people that are praying for you. There's people that have your back, but go into every encounter with that encounter being new. These are all human beings and people. To my white brothers and sisters, I'll say this. Don't grow tired of talking about this, of hearing about it. I call it, don't get racial fatigue. I mean, there's too many white people that want to just move on. Does everything have to be about race? To us, it does. I mean, I don't see color. Well, I do, right? I mean,
I'm black.
I see that, And so don't grow fatigued, my white brothers and sisters. And then to my black and brown brothers and sisters, I'm going to say this. Let's let love and forgiveness be the language that we speak. Because I know, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand and say it, brothers, on this call, but I know that I get the dumb questions just like you all do. We get them. But, I say this, and we talk about this in our book. If white people are comfortable enough to ask us questions, and even if it's something that they should know or whatever, let's give them a pass once or twice. Now, white people, you need to educate yourself. You don't come and ask us the same dumb questions over and over. You know what I'm saying? But you need to Google some of those things. Right. But we need to be able to give some passes and to create the dialogue. Because I say this, if people are willing to talk, and if they're willing to have dialogue, that means that they want to come together. And so I just think, and my wife and I believe this, that the church needs to be the ones that lead the discussions about racial reconciliation. We are the ones that have to talk about it, because the world doesn't understand that the end goal is about having unity and peace between the races so that we can spread the gospel of Jesus to everyone. So that's where I'll leave it. Any last thoughts or last questions? All right. Hey, I'm going to tell you this. If you're watching this, we have some great gentlemen on this call. Pastor Tony Gilmore, he leads Tony Gilmore Ministries. Follow him. I'll probably put in the comments when we post this a link to him. And man, he's doing some great stuff, some daily words and different things like that. And then my man, Pastor Isaiah, he's an excellent communicator and evangelist. He's doing some great work and a lot of stuff with youth and young adults and adults as well. We've had him in our church. Not pastor, but my man, Derek McBride, we call him D-Mac. He's got an upcoming.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
D-Mac, he's got a book coming out, One Search for All. And man, just tell him a little bit, give us a little plug for what's the book about.
It's exactly about this. It's about my grandfather and the experience that he had, and he took care of an African-American woman for a long time, and she went up missing, and nobody wanted to help look for or find her. So he set out to search for her, and the rest is history. So that book will be out real soon, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And can't wait to get everybody's feedback, and can't wait for you to read it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then I'll tell you this, if you want more resources, man, my wife and I, we've recently written a book. I just so happen to have it right here. Let's Start Again.
Oh.
PT, represent, PT, represent. But man, it's just a follow-up. We feel like the Lord gave us a video that ended up going viral a few years ago, 35 million views. And since then, the Lord's kind of just beckoning us to come into this discussion. And we're just, we want to put the head and the mind with the heart that video hit. And so our main goal is this, 1 John 1:5-7. We know that God is light, in him there's no darkness at all. If we claim to be in the light, but we don't live that way, then we're liars. And so our challenge is for Christians to be the light. We know that, his blood, it's Christ's blood that purifies us from all sin, even the sin of racism. And Christians have to be the ones that are speaking the language of love and forgiveness in order for that message to go out. So, gentlemen, any last second? Anything? All right, hey.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
You too, D.
That's all we have here. Thanks for joining us, guys. Check out each and every one of these men's ministries, and we'll put links on there. God bless you.
All right. God bless you.